the first version of that, which was the last version of that, because I kind of figured, I was like, everything else is kind of like the Cliff Notes version of what I'm going to talk to everybody about, so why bore them with it twice? But, you know, while I was here at Hampden-Sydney, I graduated in 2003, as Pat had said. I was involved in a lot of different things. As some other people here have said, I had an opportunity to lead, and I took it. I was a master alchemist for a year. I was an RA for 3 years. I served in 3 different residential settings, all freshman settings for 3 years. ODK, everything, Society of 91 leadership. It was great. It was the greatest part about Hampden-Sydney was that it was small enough to allow you all those kinds of opportunities to lead, so that when you actually do have to do it later, you know what you've done because you've done it in the past and you have something to fall back on. So in 2003 I graduated, and I decided that the best thing for me would just be to disappear into the woods. So I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2004. It took me 6 months and 3 days. I started March 20th. I finished September 23rd. March 20th I left Springer Mountain, and I summited Mount Katahdin in Maine on September 23rd.
And what was your name?
My trail name was the Friar. And short of my 4 years here at Hampden-Sydney, the best experience of my life. It was great. And I mention that for a very specific reason, because that hike is why I have my current job. So after I finished hiking, I really had kind of 2 thoughts. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to medical school. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to law school. Pat will tell you, I'm like the black sheep of my family. I'm probably the least successful one of all of them, as amazing as that sounds. My sister actually just sold her company for $194 million a few months ago. Very, very successful family. I'm like the black sheep of them all. So in determining whether I'm going to go to medical school or law school, one thing that had stuck with me was something that I had learned from Dr. Anderson when I was here. Dr. Anderson had talked at some point, and I'm not sure if anyone, I know Dr. Anderson's not here, can corroborate or remember this. He had some kind of a patent at some point with respect to paint applied to Navy warships and trying to run a current through the paint that would help prevent barnacle growth, right? And I remember him telling me this while I was in his chemistry class. And I'm like, well, what's a patent? So I learned about patent. And I'm like, you know, that actually sounds like something I would like to do. I started out here, right, at Hampden-Sydney. I thought I came here, I was going to be like a classics major, and I was going to major in a Latin or some other esoteric thing. And then I start out, and I find out that I kind of like biology, so I started taking some biology classes. And it wasn't until I took chemistry in my sophomore year, and Dr. Sipe, he can corroborate this. I take his chemistry class my very first year. Where's Kent? Kent, you said you weren't a very good student. Right there with you, bud. So at the end of my first semester, right, I go and I sit down and I take that chemistry exam. Whoever's taking the chemistry exam knows exactly what I'm talking about. I can't remember Dr. Porterfield, do you do the essays first and then the ACS multiple choice questions, or was it vice versa? I don't remember, but I remember that by the time I was done with the first part of it, I think it was the essays. It took me about 30 minutes when I walked into Dr. Sipe's office and I said, I'm done. True story. He's like, what is this? I said, I'm done. This class, this test, I'm done. He then lectured me for a good half hour about how he thought that I had the worst patience of any student that he had taught in his many years. And he wasn't wrong. And the only thing that aggravated me about the lecture was that it was like my father was talking to me. It was the exact same thing that I'd heard from my father, right? He wasn't wrong. Roll the clock ahead another semester. Now, it's my sophomore year, second semester. I'm finishing up his second semester of G-Chem. And I'm like, you know, I actually think I may not be very good at this, but I kind of like chemistry. So then I sat down with him when I was all done with my classes my sophomore year, and I'm like, I want to become a chemistry major. I want to major in chemistry. And he tells me, it's not easy, but we can do it. So we sit down, and he writes out basically every class that I'm going to take for the next 8 semesters, right? The next 2 years. I'm going to double up on my advanced labs. I'm going to do this. Meanwhile, I'm still majoring in economics. So I'm double majoring in chemistry and economics, and I'm pulling double duty. There were times where, you guys talking about pulling all-nighters here. I had 2 advanced labs, both semesters, my senior year, while also being a master alchemist. Not the easiest thing in the world. My grades weren't all that great, but I managed to pull it off. All right? It's what you do with the opportunities that you are given, in part. And so I leave that, I go hike, I go to law school, I want to become a patent attorney, and I am a patent attorney. Passed the patent bar in 2008, and I become a patent attorney. In 2009, I graduate right in the middle of a recession, and you can't buy a patent job. You can't buy it, right? They're nowhere to be found. Why? Because every single corporation that had patent work put it off to the side. They had no money after the crash, right? So every large patent law firm lays off every mid-level patent associate that they have. Everyone that's got 5 to 7 years worth of experience, they're gone, they're unemployed. So all of those people then get gobbled up by all the boutique patent law firms. All the boutique patent law firms take all those people with 5 to 7 years experience, or they step out and they go out and they open up their own shop as a patent attorney. So I went and I clerked for a judge for 2 years, hoping that this glut would clear. I clerked for 2 years as a Superior Court law clerk in New Jersey. And I stepped outside, I walked across the street, and after 2 years when my clerkship was done, I took a job, and I divorced people for a living. And it's everything I thought it could be and more. I am like a rail gun for your marital assets. It's what I do. I focus and I specialize in really high net worth divorces. I haven't yet represented an NFL player, but I've represented several of their wives and a couple of their girlfriends. $100 million divorces, $200 million divorces, everything. And it's amazing. And one of the things that I learned from Hampden-Sydney that I was able to transfer over to my current job is I'm not just a divorce attorney. I'm not just a litigator. I'm a litigator, I'm an attorney, I'm a counselor in the truest sense of the word. I'm a therapist. I don't have a social work degree. I have no idea what my clients call me. I am their therapist. I'm their psychologist. I don't write scripts, but I'm basically their psychiatrist too. I've become an expert in taxes. I've become an expert in closely held businesses. I've become an expert in private equity investments, right? Rabbi trusts, all kinds of high-level compensation issues that are associated with people who make lots and lots of money, right? The pizza guy, right? I know more about cash and how you can hide cash and where you can hide cash than anybody else could possibly imagine, right? The pizza guy is the guy that you always think about. All right, I'm in New Jersey, all right? Pizza guys are pretty ubiquitous up there. They all deal in cash. But there's an original cash person, and that's the farrier, right? I represented the farrier. I divorced him. Over $2 million worth of assets. Goes out, he shoes a horse, a couple $100, big farms in New Jersey, all over the place, dressage, 3 event riders, shoes all of them, okay? Gets paid $200 in cash, goes back out every 2 weeks, does it again, does it again. Accumulated millions of dollars in assets. No income. No income for his entire life. So finding the income, knowing how are these things, what I learned from Hampden-Sydney, both being an economics major, a chemistry major, and quite frankly, not being a very good chemistry major, was where to go to find the answer, right? That's one of the things that I think that Hampden-Sydney taught me more than anything else. Guys in the back, you're not going to know the answer. A lot of times you're not going to know the answer. It's where do you go to find the answer, and can you get there quicker than anybody else, right? Quite honestly. And that's one aspect that I've been able to take away from Hampden-Sydney and apply to my everyday life. I mean, the other thing that I think that I would advise you guys to do, what's your, I mean, are you guys sophomores, juniors, seniors, kind of all over the place in terms of, kind of all over the place? I had a series of, in my opinion, close mentors while I was here. The best thing you can do is to have those people as well. You know, I don't know that Dr. Sipe was ever really my advisor, but he became my de facto advisor for a certain period, you know, at a certain point in time. But between Dr. Sipe, Dr. Victor Cavus, who sadly is no longer with us, Dean Klein, who's no longer here anymore as well, and even Pat, right? Pat's one of my best friends. That guy works harder than anybody else I know. He's not just smart, he actually works hard. Having him as a mentor, following him, seeing the things that he did, learning from him, how he carried himself, and interesting tidbit. So, the Master Alchemist just after me, Michael Kramer, hiked the Appalachian Trail the year after me. So you're on the clock, Pat. We need 3, right? Whenever you're ready,
Maybe.
no pressure, but you could be 3 in a row to hike the Appalachian Trail, all Master Alchemists back to back to
All
back.
right, got one down.
All right. So
After tenure.
it's really, it's those relationships that I've formed, that I've continued to hold on to, and quite honestly, I don't get back here enough. I live in New Jersey. I work long hours, and many of the hours that I worked here at the chemistry lab, I just do in my home now. Right? I go home, I work. But there is a point, there is a reason, and I have a wonderful family and I love my family, but the hard work really never stops, right? You keep putting in the hard work, and I'm not necessarily where I thought I was going to be. Somebody, I think maybe it was Ken or maybe it was David, had said, you're going to end up doing maybe something a little different, make the best of your situation, your niche. My niche is now a high net worth divorce attorney, and it's great. Like I said, it's everything I thought it could be and more. Did I foresee that being the case? Absolutely not. I thought I was going to be a patent attorney. I thought I was going to sit in the back of an office, and I was going to look at specifications and claims language all day long and file patent applications. And I was super excited about that. Turns out I'm actually pretty good at litigating. I'm great at trial. Never would have expected that. Not what I wanted to do. But all those times sitting up there, on the 3rd floor of Gilmer, right here, I guess. This looks like a different room. I feel like I'm in a different building because this is all renovated. But 3rd floor here, those presentations every single Friday, don't take those for granted, okay? Those are an opportunity for you to learn how to speak in public to other people. And it's a great thing that Dr. Slipe and Dr. Porterfield, Dr. Mueller, everybody forced us, Dr. Dunn, forced us to do that, right? Forced us to get up in front. Now, I don't talk with slides, but because I'm an attorney. One thing about attorneys, the jury is never going to know what you forgot to tell them, but they're always going to remember the guy who showed up with note cards, right? It's true. Have confidence when you speak, right? Even if you don't know what you're going to say, if you say it confidently, people believe you. And it's true 100% of the time. I think we've learned that over the last few years, right? As long as you say it with enough gusto, people are like, yeah, all right, I believe, of course, yeah, sure, sounds right, right? So take those opportunities to learn how to speak, how to communicate. I think David had talked about rhetoric, and I would go a step further than just the rhetoric. It's not just writing clearly and effectively, it's communicating clearly and effectively, right? In how you speak, how you hold yourself, how you talk, right? And like, Pat will be the first, not Randall's. Randall's never did this, but lots of times we were drinking down at the house and Dr. Syke would show up or another professor, and you just have to learn how to communicate effectively in all situations, right? Be appropriate at all times, right? It's the most important thing, that ability to communicate. And if you can communicate, you're going to go very, very far. So if there's anything that anyone is interested in knowing about me or about, the law firm life or how I got to law firm, how many attorneys are there out of the Beta Chi chapter?
Paralegal.
7? It's more than I would have imagined. It's more than I would imagine. But the chemistry degree and science in particular sets you up for that. I attack everything in a very kind of formulaic approach, formulaic manner. Right? It doesn't seem like it from my speech, but law is just a chemistry problem. It is, right? You've got elements that you have to meet. You've got things that you have to prove. It's a series of proofs and theorems, and you're trying to prove all those things to 12 other people, or in the case of a divorce, just one judge, right? It's exactly the same. It's a very transferable skill, at least as it relates to law. And I'm sure it's true for a lot of other things. Anyone else who has to speak and has to convince and has to speak persuasively for anything, all of the same skills that you'll learn here, you can apply in the future. And as a last thing I would say, I remember sitting here on a Friday afternoon 20 years ago. You guys are so much luckier than I was, because I listened to like an hour-and-a-half speech on surfactants. Not that surfactants aren't interesting, but somebody from Procter & Gamble came who was great. He was wonderful. But it was an hour-and-a-half on how dirt comes off of the clothes through a surfactant into solution and out the washing machine. Hour-and-a-half Greek week. Kent and David and Ben, much better speakers. I'll sell myself short, not so great. Those guys, much better, and I'm sure everyone else you're going to hear much better than what we had to listen to many years ago. But that's pretty much all I got for you. Any questions, any comments?